Hello, everyone. Back in August of last year, we went to see the Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Village, which is located about 50 kilometers east of Edmonton, Alberta. The Heritage Village, founded in 1971, is mainly an open air museum that recreates the lives of Ukrainian pioneers coming to Canada between 1899 and the 1930s. Upon arriving, you first go to the Visitor Center, where you have the option of going through a small interpretive center which goes over Ukrainian culture and the journey they took to Canada. I believe it's well worth taking the time to walk through the displays here, as it sets up an understanding before going out into the open air museum. Once you get to this point of the interpretive center, they have arrived in Canada, and it goes over how they adapted but retained their culture. I found this piece of furniture interesting. This is not unique to Ukrainian pioneers, but as you can see, this is a very well made china cabinet and shows some skilled woodworking. However, when you look at the back, you can see that it's made from old wooden boxes and crates, so that's pretty cool. And here's a pretty strong example of their culture coming over to Canada. Showing here on the right is a cement mold used to cast headstones, which is the first time I've been able to see one of these. After being prepped, it was time to head out into the village. A lot of the village buildings are original and have been moved to the site and restored to represent various periods of the early 20th century. Walking over the Goose Lake Bridge, we found ourselves at a train station and a grain elevator. A lot of the buildings are open, and you can walk inside to see how it may have been back in those early years. As mentioned, this is a grain elevator, and these still can be found all across the Canadian prairies and are pretty iconic. The truck or wagon, depending on the period, would drive into here and was weighed before unloading using this scale showing here. After unloading the grain, this conveyor would then take it up to feed into one of the storage bins. The metal wheel controls which bin the grain goes into. And back here is where the grain would be loaded into railway grain cars. You can see the chutes coming down from the grain bins here. And as with the trucks and wagons, the railway cars would also have to be weighed to determine the volume of grain added. And finally, this machine would be used to test the quality of the grain coming in. The next place we visited was once a home and detachment of a police officer that was in the area. The home gives a bit of an idea of how he would have lived during this time.
So many of those have gone into the army with those shortage, and kept on running until 1932.
And this section of the house would have been his office, and to the right is the jail cell. It's a pretty cramped office, so it was hard to get a good shot of it. We found ourselves walking down this beautiful wooded path, which took us to where they had the early farms displayed. At a lot of these early farms, we certainly noticed the Ukrainian influence in the building designs. But this, I would say, is a pretty typical horse or cow barn that you'd find on the prairies. we briefly explored one of the Ukrainian-inspired houses. And as we approached this barn, we could certainly see an Eastern European influence, which included a thatched roof. The museum also had on display some old-style bake ovens. They also had this one, which had been kept in a shelter. It also included some of the items and tools that would be needed. This was interesting. It's called a bird eye, I hope I said that right, and it represents a type of pit house that was used by Ukrainian settlers that arrived to Canada. While the areas where these were found was quite forested, it does have some similarities to sod houses, which were also found in the prairies at that time. For this home, they have on display a typical interior of the time. You will also notice that the floor is actually packed earth, which would have been also typical for this period. These guys were pretty lucky. They had gotten some watermelon on this warm day. This is a roadside shrine that were fairly common in East Central Alberta and were usually found at crossroads. Along the way, we found this Orthodox church, which had a really nice wood exterior. So at this point, we were going from the rural setting to the town site, which has buildings that were brought here from various places in Alberta. And the first place we stopped at was this school, which is from a period of 1925 to 1930. But I believe that all the buildings within the town site were from that period. A bit of a history lesson on how the British flag was created. This room would have been for higher education, as you can see the science equipment in the cabinet. I was unsure if this school ever had a high school though, so it may have been for higher elementary classes. We came across this blacksmith shop, which also had one of the historical interpreters there. I will also point out that for this museum, all the costume interpreters will perform as if they were set back in that time, to help bring you into the history of that period.
There's another reason for my preparation is it's going to be harvesting season soon, so I have to get ready and be able to meet demand.
As we walked around, we found ourselves doing a little bit of window shopping and getting a feel of what it must have been like during that time. This church, which is one of the highlights of the museum, is called St. Vladimir's Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which was originally in Vegreville, Alberta, and built around 1934. The church, as you can see, is beautifully painted inside and it depicts many religious figures. You will also notice that some of the walls and the ceiling have been painted to look like stone or marble, so somebody really knew what they were doing when they're painting this church. I really like this gas station and repair shop with its old pumps. To operate it, you pumped how much gas you wanted into the top chamber, which had graduation marks in gallons, and then you filled your car as normal with the hose. A last walk through one of the horse stables. I hope you enjoyed this tour of this historical living museum. Thanks so much for coming over.